Greetings everyone, this is Tanya and I love iodine. This presentation is going to focus on iodine as an essential nutrient for more than just thyroid health. The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare provider. This information is not to be used or relied upon for any diagnostic or treatment purposes. I am not a doctor, not pretending to be one, not giving medical advice. Please do your own research. Please discuss everything with your healthcare provider. Please take a moment to pause this video and read the rest of this disclaimer. This information is provided based upon my experiences, my years of extensive research, and educational study. Yet each person is different, and the way you react to a particular food, herb, or product may be significantly different from the way that I or others have reacted to such items. So you should consult with your physician or healthcare professional regarding any potential adverse interactions between your current medications, nutritional supplements, before introducing any new supplements, foods, herbs, etc. into your diet and or before adding any new protocol to your lifestyle. If you need to get in contact with me, please feel free to do so at www.iloveiodine.com. There's a contact page. You can reach out to me and you can directly message me privately. That way, if you don't want to leave a comment in the YouTube section, or if you don't want to leave a comment on my website that other people can read, feel free to do that privately. So this talk is going to discuss what is iodine and why should we care. We're going to discuss the halogens, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, and iodine. We're going to discuss how these fluorine, chlorine, bromine are known as iodine uptake inhibitors and how they do so. We're also going to discuss other iodine uptake inhibitors. We're going to discuss why adequate iodine is necessary for optimal health. And we're going to talk about the consequences of iodine inadequacies. And lastly, we're going to talk about some sources of iodine. So firstly, what is iodine? Well, it's a trace mineral, also known as a micromineral. It's essential for the diet. It's a chemical element of atomic number 53. We're going to discuss the periodic table briefly as well. It's the heaviest and the least available of the stable halogens. It's a non-metallic element and it forms black crystals in its solid form that look like this. Quite beautiful. And it has violet vapor when it's in its gas form. Also quite beautiful, just quite different. It is essential for the body, and humans need, I emphasize, need iodine for normal thyroid function. Of course, we're going to get that from our diet, and we're going to get this, the reason the thyroid function, why it's necessary, it's for the production of thyroid hormones as well as other body functions. Okay? So, before we get started, we want to talk about iodine allergy. For one, no one is allergic to dietary iodine. It's actually necessary for survival. Some medications, solutions, and concentrations that contain iodine may cause a person to have an allergic reaction. This is due to other substances that have been mixed with iodine, not the iodine itself. For example, there's iodinated contrast dye, and these are chemical agents containing iodine used in radio contrast agents to improve X-ray imaging studies. And these have been associated with severe reactions, even death in a rare number of cases. This is due to the other chemicals, not the iodine. Okay, and this is where people are actually injected with this, or they drink it. I assume one or the other. I think in both cases it could be consumed both ways. Iodine containing antiseptic solutions, and these are used to cleanse the skin, can cause a skin reaction. For example, betadine, which is a povidone iodine solution. And this is due to the povidone, not the iodine. Okay? And people might think they have an iodine deficiency because they're allergic to such things as shellfish or fish or possibly dairy as well. And this is actually not that they're allergic to iodine, they're allergic to something else in these foods that is causing the allergic reactions. Thus, people believe they have an iodine allergy, but no one is allergic to iodine in reality. So, iodine is an essential nutrient. We need it for the body, and we are not allergic to it. Okay? All cells and organs in your body make use of iodine in some manner. It's concentrated in the glandular system of the body, with your thyroid containing the highest amount compared to any other organ. Significant amounts are also stored in the salivary glands, the cerebral spinal fluid, and the brain. Gastric mucosa, choroid plexus, breast, and the ovaries. Also, I think there could be stored in the testicles as well. It's needed for cells to convert food into energy. That's whenever we're dealing with the thyroid. not the other glands per se. And for example, we have T4 is a thyroid hormone containing iodine, and it's required for normal thyroid function. Without normal thyroid function, we will not function at all. We will cease to exist. Okay? And iodine may also play a role in immune response and has a beneficial impact on memory dysplasia and fibrocystic breast disease. It is known that there are worldwide deficiencies of iodine. It's estimated that 2 billion individuals have an insufficient iodine intake. Now, a lot of times when you look at the WHO, they'll focus on South Asia, maybe Sub-Saharan Africa, because these are particularly affected, but this is actually a worldwide phenomenon. And it's known about 50% of Europe remains mildly iodine deficient. It's also known that iodine intakes in the United States and Australia have fallen in recent years. We're going to talk about some of the reasons why as well. Iodine was added to salt. In fact, in the 1920s, after a severe iodine deficiency resulted in what is known as the goiter belt in the Great Lakes region of the United States, the Appalachian Mountains also here as well, and other regions of the world. So keep those things in mind. A lot of people aren't actually consuming iodized salt as much anymore, so that's also leading to a deficiency, and we're going to talk about some of the other disruptors, which is also going to lead to some disruption in the iodine we are actually consuming. So firstly, we're going to talk about the halogens, and here we actually have all 4 of them that we're going to be discussing that are in the same class. On the left here, we have fluorine, we have chlorine, that's the one next to the right. Then the sunset orange, like the burnt orange one, is the bromine, and then the purple violet vapor is the iodine. Okay, so let's look at the periodic table for a second. So we had already looked at the fluorine, which is number 9. 17 is chlorine, 35 is bromine, 53 is iodine. The other 2 we are not going to discuss. Those are radioactive, with short half-lives, and actually do not occur naturally in nature, so we're not going to discuss those, but they are technically halogens. And this is just with those labeled for your purposes only. So we have 6 elements in this group 17 in the periodic table. And as we've discussed, we've already shown those. And the astatine and the tennessine, I assume that's how that is pronounced, are radioactive elements that we've talked about. Okay, so we're going to worry about the fluorine, the bromine, and the chlorine. So these have great resemblances to one another in their general chemical behavior and in the properties of their components with other elements. Chlorine is the best known of the halogen elements. It's a free element, widely used as a water purification agent. Think about chlorine in your water. We also know that we might, if we're hikers, have chlorine tablets that we might carry with us to purify our waters. And also chlorine bleach can be used to clean our clothes and also to disinfect as well. And we also know that it's employed in several other chemical processes. For example, table salt is sodium chloride, and it's one of the most familiar chemical compounds. So fluoride is also a halogen, and it's added to public water supplies as well as toothpaste because it's supposed to prevent tooth decay. For whatever your beliefs are or whatever your knowledge base is, just let you know, I don't do either. And I have good teeth. I don't use fluoridated toothpaste, and I stay away from fluoride in my water. And I was fortunate enough to grow up on spring water as a child. So I actually had very little fluoride in my life, and we never went to a dentist or did fluoride treatments until I was older. So anyway, that being said, I was a little fortunate, I guess, in some ways. And next, we're going to talk about bromine, which is used chiefly to prepare bromine compounds that are used in flame retardants, as general pesticides, and in commercial flour. We're going to talk about all of those. So let's talk about bromine sources, because this is a very bad substance to be consuming or to be exposed to. It comes in the form of brominated flame retardants. It actually had been put in cars, furniture, electronics prior to 2004 when they were banned. But there's still a lot of products that we have that were produced before then that we're still using or possibly could be in our house and could still be off-gassing. And then, of course, we have the polybrominated diphenyl ethers, the PBDEs, and these were once used in products including furniture foam as well as electronics, so that's why we may have those as well. That new car smell that we have now, they're supposed to be using safer chemicals, but previous to 2004, they were using these brominated flame retardants. It actually caused me to have a reaction to it in 2000, when I got a 2000 brand new vehicle, and it actually caused my thyroid to stop functioning. So keep those things in mind. Even though they say they're using safer chemicals, I still am very careful about new cars and making sure that I'm getting a lot of airflow whenever I'm in a new car. And anyway, if you have products that were made before the ban, you maybe consider replacing, or maybe making sure that they're well ventilated. Foam does break down over time, and that might cause some issues. And another type of ways that we can get bromine in our bodies is if we're drinking drinks like Mountain Dew. So let's look at the ingredients of this. And I do highly encourage people that if you are drinking Mountain Dew, please consider stopping. It's actually, there's no nutritional value to this. And there's just a lot of toxic chemicals in it, from the carbonated water, which is not healthy. High fructose corn syrup, not healthy. Citric acid's fine. Concentrated orange juice, sure. And natural flavor could be. But the preservatives, we have the sodium benzoate, not good. Caffeine, depending on the source, can be very, unhealthy. Plus, we're over-caffeinated anyway. I'm not trying to preach because I drink a little too much caffeine myself. And sodium citrate. And, of course, we have other preservatives. But then, of course, the next to last ingredient is brominated vegetable oil. The reason they put that in there is because they want to keep that color consistent throughout, that color that you're going to get from the yellow number 5. If you're curious about the safety of yellow number 5, look into the Twinkie defense. That was actually, just check into that. Just Google it and see what that produces and about maybe the impacts of yellow number 5. Next up, we have some additional ways we can get bromine in our diet. We don't want to, but these are ways that unfortunately they can be going into our diet. And I do want to start, when we're going to talk about brominated flour, that brominated flour is banned in China, but it's legal in the United States. It's illegal according to the European Union, but it's legal in the United States. It's illegal in Canada, but you can get it here. Illegal in Brazil, you can get it in America, and many other places where it is actually banned. But here in America, absolutely not a problem. Keep those things in mind. And it's banned and illegal in these places because it is known that it causes cancer in rats and mice. Guess what? They're mammals too. Just saying. And anyway, this brominated flour, it's flour that has been treated with potassium bromate to improve the dough's elasticity and produce a higher rise. Now, back in the day, they used to use forms of iodine to do it. Now they're using forms of bromine. Interesting. So back in the day, bread used to be a good source of iodine whenever they used forms of iodine as a dough conditioner. They're not doing that now. They're using this. And it's a powerful oxidizing agent that chemically ages flour much faster than open air. It bleaches dough. It enhances its elasticity, and the end result is fluffy and soft and unnaturally white. Think of Wonder Bread. We're going to look at a picture of that in a moment. And whenever we're looking at oxidizing agents, think on that for a second. Oxidizing agents. Things that oxidize, they're kind of rusting, aging. Oxidation, free radicals, leads to cancer. So if it is a known powerful oxidizing agent, it is no wonder that it would be a cancer-causing agent. And, we want antioxidants in our diets, like vitamin C and selenium, things of that nature. Things that are going to neutralize those free radicals and those oxidizing agents. How we do that is eat better and don't put so much toxic substances into the body. So this brominated flour is treated with potassium bromate. And according to research, it causes cancer in the thyroid, kidneys, and other parts of rats and mice, and I would assume humans as well. The end product, allegedly, is said to not contain potassium bromate, which changes to potassium bromate, a harmless byproduct during baking. Well, that said, don't eat raw or undercooked dough, because we definitely know if it's brominated, you're going to be getting the potassium bromate. But also make sure to bake at high enough temperatures. But that's no guarantee that all potassium bromate is converted to potassium bromide. They could be using a lot of the bromate, not enough it can convert to the harmless. So my solution and what I do is I just don't eat products made with brominated flour. If you go to an Italian restaurant, make sure they're using, pastas and flours from Italy. Make sure that, it matters what we eat, okay? So here's some Wonder Bread. And I wonder how, growing up, which fortunately we didn't eat this, we were too poor to have Wonder Bread, how we survived, I guess. But anyway, my mom made a lot of bread herself because we were too poor to buy even this stuff. So this is not real food, so in some ways I am very thankful for my humble upbringings because it gave me non-fluoridated water and homemade bread. So that said, how much iodine? And we also need to talk about when too much can be almost as bad as too little. Maybe in some cases even worse. So here are the recommended daily allowances for iodine. Now this is according to the NIH, National Institutes of Health. And that being said, usually this is the minimal amount that we need to survive, not necessarily how much we need to thrive. It also does not take into account the iodine disruptors that we're going to talk about, which we've already talked about to a degree, which is chlorine, the fluoride, and the bromine. Okay, so whenever you're having those, that's going to disrupt it. It's going to compete. Bromine is extremely bad. It will block all of those receptors. Your iodine won't get in. And even if you start consuming iodine, it will take a while to displace the bromine in your body. So keep those things in mind. They're not taking into account that when they're giving these minimal amounts. So depending on the situation, one might need more iodine or not. Consult with your physician or healthcare provider or health guru, whatever you go to. Whatever works for you. Anyway, these are the amount. It's in micrograms. So for an adult, 150 micrograms. As you can see, children, infants do need a little bit more than it drops. I think, there's some issues with these. And pregnant teens and women need significantly more because they have to provide that to the child. The WHO actually has higher amounts. I think it's 250 micrograms for their recommended amount for pregnant women. So keep in mind there's not even a consensus between the NIH and the WHO. So let's talk about tolerable daily intakes. And this is according to the Linus Pauling Institute. And it suggested that adults should try to get about 150 micrograms of iodine per day. And it gives a list of the maximum amount of iodine someone should consume without having, or can consume rather, without having any negative side effects. Okay, for the age groups, adults up to 1,100 micrograms is what you shouldn't try to be going over. That's 1.1 gram. Okay. So let's talk about some iodine deficiencies and excessive issues. So some of the impacts of iodine deficiency include a thyroid enlargement, which is known as a goiter. And according to some agencies, it states that this is one of the earliest and most visible signs of iodine deficiency. I think this is false. A goiter is a physiological adaptation of the thyroid gland in response to persistent stimulation by TSH. TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone produced by your pituitary gland. Now, it doesn't make sense that this is going to be the earliest and most visible sign. That's where you have an advanced deficiency. Your thyroid is already very desperate to get iodine at that point for it to enlarge to that degree. And so there's definitely earlier physical signs that are more subtle, but definitely very easily observed. So we need to be in tune with our body and be aware of these things and of the symptoms, and we need to be making sure that our physician is aware of them as well. It's also known that iodine deficiency can lead to lowered cognitive function during childhood and even adulthood. It is stated that a moderate to severe iodine deficiency, particularly in children, can reduce IQ by about 12 to 13.5 points. That might not sound like a lot, but actually one standard deviation of IQ is 15 points. So on average, IQ is 100 points. So one standard deviation would take you to 115. That is significant. You go 2 standard deviations, which is a distance of 30 points. You are going from average to like genius level. We're talking, gifted level. So, and if you are an average and you're reducing these standard deviation nearly, you're actually putting yourself in some profoundly reduced, IQ, as far as IQ points. So to the point that you're having some serious developmental issues and some cognitive issues. So effects of mild iodine deficiency during childhood are more difficult to quantify. Some research suggests that mild iodine deficiency is associated with subtle neurodevelopmental deficits. Deficiency can cause an inability to work and think clearly in children and adults. This is very important. We really need to make sure that we're getting enough, whether we're throughout all of our life. And it's also known, according to the World Health Organization, that during the neonatal period, children and adolescents, iodine deficiency disorders can lead to hypothyroidism and hypothyroidism. This actually is for everybody, not just those. This is a picture of a woman with a goiter. This is, a pretty sizable. You can see the swelling in her neck, but there has been cases where they have been much more. Of course, you can see other effects of the thyroid with her eyes being very wide and buggy. So another issues with impacts of iodine deficiency would be fetal and infant development. Deficiencies in pregnant women can cause major neurodevelopmental issues in the newborn and growth retardation in the fetus. It can also lead to miscarriages, stillbirths. It can permanently damage the fetus by causing stunted growth, intellectual disability, and delayed sexual development. In severe cases, cretinism, it's a condition characterized by intellectual disability, deaf mutism, motor spasticity, stunted growth, delayed sexual maturation, and other physical and neurological abnormalities. And so these are things that we really need to keep in mind if we have women that are considering becoming pregnant. We need to make sure there's adequate iodine, before conception, because most women don't even know they're pregnant until they're, 4 to 6 weeks into the pregnancy. Other impacts on fetal and infant development. It is known that infants are more sensitive to the effects of iodine deficiency than other age groups. Mild to moderate iodine insufficiency during pregnancy may subtly affect fetal development. Breast milk, it does contain iodine, although concentrations vary based on maternal iodine levels. If a mother isn't actually getting iodine, there is no way it's going to magically appear in her breast milk. Sufficient iodine uptake after birth is also important for proper physical and neurological growth and maturation. That's going to continue through childhood, and also you do need it for your brain to function all through your life, and for your metabolism, everything else to go. And less severe iodine deficiency can cause lower than average IQs in infants and children. Of course, that would persist into adulthood as well. It's also known that during pregnancy and early infancy, iodine deficiency can cause irreversible effects. So we need to keep those things in mind. Also, impacts of iodine deficiency is a big one is fibrocystic breast disease. And this is a condition characterized by lumpy, painful breasts and a fibrosis. Commonly affects women of reproductive age, but it can also occur during menopause, especially in women taking estrogens. Breast tissue has a high concentration of iodine, especially during pregnancy and lactation. Think on that for a moment. Think of all the stuff that we get in the month of October. And no one is talking about iodine and the impact on breast health. Some research suggests that iodine supplementation might be helpful for fibrocystic breast disease, although a specific mechanism of action has not been established and data are limited. So think on those things. I know a lot of people, myself, they used to have fibrocystic breast issues. I do not anymore because I get adequate iodine. Back in the day when I was absolutely iodine deficient, which was provable, even though it was very difficult to get a test by a doctor, and it took me 2 years. I had a lot of issues with it, and it was very uncomfortable and it was very painful. And I sympathize with anybody suffering from it, but do consider looking into maybe an iodine deficiency. Other issues of impacts of iodine deficiency would be radiation-induced thyroid cancer. Nuclear accidents can release radioactive iodine in the environment. Keep in mind, I know there's some people out there that don't believe in nuclear science. I'm on the fence, I guess, myself. Things of that nature. But anyway, there's definitely radioactive iodine that can be produced into the environment. I just don't necessarily know where it comes from. And this can increase the risk of thyroid cancer in exposed individuals, especially children. Thyroid uptake of radioactive iodine is higher in people with iodine deficiency, because if you have no iodine and your body is craving it, it's going to say, okay, that's iodine, whether it's radioactive or not. So, with respect to that, I do wonder, and this is just speculation on my part, X-rays, do they cause problems with, or iodine? Are they depleting it? Is that a possibility? I don't know. Is this just radioactive iodine? Would the scanners at the airport be an issue? I don't know per se. I kind of err on the side of caution. I opt out. I don't go through the scanner. I do the pat down instead. And I'm not saying one way or the other. I just err on the side of caution when it comes to a lot of things like that. And then, that's my stance. You can feel completely different about it. Anyway, for this reason, iodine-deficient individuals have a particularly high risk of developing radiation-induced thyroid cancer when exposed to radioactive iodine. So that is fact. But the other thing is just speculation on my part. But the impact of having too much iodine can actually be quite severe as well, and these can cause some of the same symptoms of iodine deficiency. One can get a goiter, which is the enlarged thyroid gland inflammation, thyroid cancer, and large doses of iodine, we're talking several grams, can cause burns of the mouth and throat, nausea, vomiting, weak pulse, and coma. I'm not exactly sure, what are they doing, taking, straight iodine, where they would be getting that from to cause burns of the mouth and throat, but, I don't think you can actually eat too much kelp and cause that. So that does beg a lot of questions. And also, we do know that large doses of almost anything can cause serious side effects. Even over and consuming water can be deadly. So, take a lot of the stuff that we get in the publications with a grain of salt, because, I don't exactly know where they'd be getting this type of iodine that would cause such things. But, we'll leave that for another day. That said, let's talk about thyroid, what it does, and signs of thyroid issues. So thyroid functions. Thyroid hormones are produced by your thyroid, and of course we need iodine to do that. We need other things as well. Make sure you get a good, balanced, healthy diet. Get lots of nutrients. Make sure you get some selenium too. Some Brazil nuts, a little bit of those. Good for the body. Anyway, the thyroid hormones regulate many biochemical responses. They're responsible for aiding in protein synthesis, enzymatic activity, proper skeletal and central nervous system, development in fetuses and infants, of course, through childhood as well, regulating energy levels, internal temperature, etc. We're talking your metabolism. So, and also, if we look at the diagram here on the right-hand side of the thyroid system, we look at the top with the hypothalamus. Your hypothalamus is going to produce your thyrotropin releasing hormone, your TRH. And of course, that is going to communicate with your pituitary gland, which is going to produce your thyroid stimulating hormone, which is your TSH. That's going to go to your thyroid and tell your thyroid, hey, produce some thyroid hormones, your T4, and which is going to result in your T3 as well. And there's a negative feedback loop, and everything works, hopefully well and in balance, and keeps everything going the way it should. But oftentimes we do find that we have deficiencies, and it leads to bodily function irregularities. Anyway, when your thyroid is functioning properly, you would have a proper metabolism, you're going to have proper growth and development, and it's going to have a proper catecholamine effect. Okay, these catecholamines increase your heart rate. You need your heart rate to be increased for it to be beating every day. It needs to do that thousands upon thousands of times daily. It also regulates your blood pressure, breathing rate, muscle strength, and mental alertness. If you're having issues with any of these, do consider speaking with your doctor about an iodine deficiency. And what is a thyroid gland? The thyroid gland is a small butterfly-shaped gland in the front of your neck. Thyroid hormones control the way the body uses energy, so they affect nearly every organ in your body, even the way your heart beats. Without enough thyroid hormones, many of your body's functions slow down. That being said, we're going to talk about how that even relates to depression. Thyroid hormones are responsible for coordinating energy, growth, and metabolism in your body. If you're having weight issues, do consider that thyroid could be a cause of it. If you have a slow functioning thyroid, you are not going to be able to properly lose weight. You're not going to have the energy to exercise, and your metabolism is going to be running slower, and it's going to be very difficult to lose weight. Okay? Hypothyroidism and hypothyroidism. These are two disorders, and they're quite opposite. Hypothyroidism is an overactive thyroid. It occurs when your thyroid gland produces too much of the hormone thyroxine. Hyperthyroidism can accelerate your body's metabolism. Sounds great, right? Lose weight. But it causes unintentional weight loss and rapid or irregular heartbeat. There is a big problem there. Several treatments are available for hyperthyroidism. There are some natural ones as well. You should figure out which works best for you if you have that condition. Hypothyroidism is an underactive thyroid. This is a condition when the thyroid gland doesn't make enough thyroid hormones for proper bodily functions. Symptoms of hypothyroidism. That's one we're going to discuss for the most part in this presentation. And we're talking deficiencies. We're talking low. Of course, there's always two sides of the same coin. So some of the symptoms could be fatigue, low energy, sluggishness, weakness, muscle weakness, aches, pains in muscles, tenderness, stiffness, joint pain, swelling in the joints, weight gain, feeling cold, trouble tolerating cold, increased sensitivity to cold, constipation, puffy face, dry skin, dry hair, brittle hair, itchy skin, dry skin, hair loss, thinning hair, decreased sweating, heavy or irregular menstrual periods, fertility problems, trouble concentrating, memory issues, impaired memory, feeling down, depressed. Symptoms of depression can easily be confused for people can be diagnosed with depression when they have a thyroid condition. Happens a lot. And slowed heartbeat, heart rate, elevated blood cholesterol level, goiter, which is an abnormal enlargement of your thyroid gland. I had subclinical hypothyroidism. Guess what? I did not have a goiter, but you know what I did have? Sluggishness, tiredness, slowed heart rate, decreased blood pressure, used to get fainting, all these things. I didn't have hoarseness or anything like that, but I did have a lot of these things. I did have dry skin, I had hair loss, dry hair, and all of those things. But I didn't have a goiter, so I had a lot of observable symptoms without actually ever having a swollen thyroid. So some causes of hypothyroidism. Well, the one we're going to talk about is too much or too little iodine in the diet, which is why it's highlighted. But there's other causes as well, and they can include Hashimoto's disease, which is also known as Hashimoto's thyroiditis, congenital hypothyroidism, which is present at birth, surgical removal of part or all of the thyroid, radiation treatment of the thyroid, of course, exposure to radioactive iodine as well. Some medicines can impact the thyroid, and pituitary disease. So there's many. Please speak with your doctor about any of these. I do know that Hashimoto's disease is supposed to be an autoimmune disorder, so do speak on that. Keep in mind that where medicine is today, it has changed a lot, and there's nothing set in stone. Science is always changing as we learn more. We don't really know a lot when it comes to the body and nutrition. We're still, as far as a world scientific body and the medical community, there's still a lot to be learned. Just keep those things in mind, okay? And anyway, what are some of the risk factors of iodine deficiency? For one, I just want to let you know that we're likely all at risk, okay? Especially in America, we're not eating the best. Myself included, I could be doing a better job. So if you have a perfect diet, I commend you. So some of the people at risk for iodine deficiency include vegans or those that avoid dairy, eggs, seaweed, seafood. We have pregnant women. Only half of the prenatal vitamins actually have been shown to contain any iodine at all. So we definitely know that pregnant women need more. So I don't really hear the alarm for that. Whenever people are pregnant, they're not putting them in all of the prenatal vitamins. So make sure that you are, making sure that you are consulting with your doctor, especially if you're trying to get pregnant, because one would not want to be deficient while trying to conceive, and because you want to give your child the best possible future that one can give. And another people that are at risk is those that do not use iodized salt. Most processed foods are not made with iodized salt. So if you think that you're getting it from that, you are not. Sea salt, Himalayan, like pink salt, they're not good sources of iodine unless they're specifically iodized. Most are not. So because they're just naturally in their way. That being said, make sure that you are, learning about what you're actually consuming. And most people, unless one supplements with iodine or consumes iodine-rich foods like seaweed often. Dairy and eggs may be a good source of iodine, but that is variable based on feed provided and other factors such as cleaning agents. And those eating a local diet with foods grown on iodine-deficient soils can be, of course, iodine deficient. And those that eat a lot of goitrogenic foods are exposed to halogens. We discussed the halogens, the bromines, the brominated flours, the flame retardants, the Mountain Dew, etc. We talk about the chlorine, the chlorinated water, taking showers in chlorinated water where we're inhaling it. We have that fluoride in our toothpaste and our waters. Filter your water. Do whatever you need to do, but get good, clean water. Your body needs it. And we're going to talk about goitrogenic foods and disruption that these cause. Soy products, which are everywhere. We're talking edamame, soy milk, tofu, soy protein isolate, tempeh, soybean oil. We are exposed to all these. I personally don't eat it. I'm allergic to it, and it caused my thyroid to absolutely not function, to the point where I was fainting and had all these issues. I even had a seizure when I was going through all of this. And anyway, that being said, crucifers are a big one as well. They are highly goitrogenic. And so we have kale, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, bok choy, mustard greens, Brussels sprouts, canola oil, watercress, turnips, radishes, etc. If you are eating a lot of goitrogenic foods like the crucifers, which I am not discouraging you to do, make sure you're mitigating that by maybe adding some sprinkles of dulse. And we're going to get into what I'm talking about when I say that, if they're unfamiliar with that. Or maybe some kelp sprinkles, or having more seaweed in the diet, or something like that to mitigate those. That's how I do it. I'm not saying you should, but I'm just suggesting it, something to consider. So, of course, we discussed the exposure to halogen chemicals that compete with iodine. And what I mean by competing with iodine is if you're consuming brominated flour, it is very dominant, okay? So if you got bromine and iodine consumed at the same time, that bromine is going to go to that thyroid. Your thyroid is going to absorb that bromine. And once it's there, it's not going anywhere. It doesn't do anything. It's not going to produce the thyroid hormones you need, and it's just going to sit there. So when you get more iodine in, that iodine is not going to be able to be absorbed because that bromine didn't go anywhere. So it has been stated that to get rid of the bromine and kind of flush that out, you have to take a lot of iodine to do so, to kind of displace it. I'm not giving medical advice or anything like that. That's just something to consider. Maybe listen to some stuff by Dr. Brownstein, and he does have some really great information on that, and that might really help you. And he is actually a doctor, so maybe go to him and he can provide some medical advice. I am not doing such things. Anyway, we've had the discussion on the fluorine and the chlorine as well. All right, so what are some sources of iodine? And as stated, it's not as easy to get as one would assume. Crazy, right? Anyway, this is a fact sheet from the NIH, National Institutes of Health. Whatever your thoughts are on that, just take that with a grain of salt too, Anyway, seaweed, nori dried, it's a, good source. 10 grams is a pretty fair amount though. So just keep in mind, that is a pretty fair amount of seaweed to be consuming in the form of nori. There are other seaweeds that are higher in iodine. We're going to talk about kelp. It's very incredibly high in iodine, probably the highest. And the number 2 and 3 foods here are bread, whole wheat, and bread white. Well, as discussed before, these are the breads made with iodate dough conditioner, which is an iodine chemical compound. Well, most aren't doing that. They're using brominated dough conditioners. So that being said, this is basically as of like the 1970s. People aren't doing this anymore. So this is really outdated information. Of course, this is recently procured from the website listed below. But that being said, if you are relying upon bread to provide your iodine, you're really going the wrong direction because most of it is brominated. It's going to give you the opposite result. And next on the list would be cod. That is definitely a good source. How many people are actually really having cod on a regular basis? Yogurt and the dairies are going to be very variable based on how the animals were fed and what the, kind of grazing lands they had. And of course the cleaning agents of, if they is with an iodine kind of based cleaner, they're going to have more. So there are definitely ways, you know what I mean? So talk to your farmer. I know most people are getting their milk at the store and have absolutely no idea where it comes from, but I highly encourage you to get closer to your food source. Maybe even if you can, consider even getting, some animals yourself. Anyway, list the other ones, iodized salt being one. Again, with iodized salt, if you keep it a long time, the iodine will actually vaporize and it won't have it in there anymore. I do believe there's better sources than eating ice cream, like a half cup of chocolate ice cream to get your iodine, but that is listed here. And, take it for what it's worth. If you want a great source is getting kelp. Of course, you want to get kelp from good clean waters and not contaminated seawater. So be mindful of where you are sourcing your seaweed. Anyway, 1/3 of a cup, which is a lot to say the least, is going to give you 19,000 micrograms, which is 12,700% of the US RDA, which is a lot. But, I add a little bit of kelp, like a little piece, like a little inch square when I'm making beans. It makes them more digestible, and it actually enhances the flavor and does add some minerals to it. Add it to your soup stock, just a small amount. Then you're not going to be concerned with having too much iodine. Another good source of iodine that I use is these kelp granules and the Dulse granules. They are by Maine Coast Organics. They are USDA certified organic. They're produced in the United States. Great company, definitely safe. They are doing a lot of testing to make sure that their products aren't contaminated, with heavy metals and the like. And anyway, just really great people, small company, and they treat their employees well from what I can observe. So these are things that we need to be consciously aware of whenever we're consuming our food. We want to look at the whole big scheme of things and the scheme of things and our impact on the world, so where we're sourcing our stuff and, kind of how those companies treat their employees, because there is something to be said about looking a little bit deeper into where we're sourcing our foods. Anyway, as it states on here, it's an excellent source of iodine. So it's not me saying it, it's them saying it, right? We have the kelp here on the left. It has 1,000% in just a teaspoon. So just a little sprinkle might be all that one would need. And Dulse has a little bit less. I like adding Dulse or kelp sprinkles if I'm having any broccoli or cauliflower to mitigate some of the effects of the goitrogenic effect of those foods. That's how I kind of deal with it, and how I also deal with my iodine deficiency and overcoming it is the Lugal solution, and there's a nascent iodine, which we're going to look at next. But this is a very common one that people will use. A Lugal iodine is a liquid made up of 2 parts potassium iodide for every 1 part elemental iodine in water, and it's also known as aqueous iodine and a strong iodine solution. It was first made in 1829 by French physician Jean Lugal. It's used, or Lugal, however you want to pronounce it, and it's used orally to treat thyroid toxicosis until surgery, and I'm not exactly sure what that is. And it protects the thyroid gland from radioactive iodine and to treat iodine deficiency. So that's how most people are using it today. And nascent iodine is actually the exact bottle that I have, and it's a consumable iodine in its atomic form rather than its molecular form, and it has an incomplete number of electrons, and it's supposed to be kind of paramagnetic. I use this, I kind of like it, and it has worked well for me. So it's in the charged state, it's held by the atom until diluted in water and consumed, where it loses its energy over time. So I kind of like it. It's recognized by the body, the same iodine that is produced by the thyroid, and it is absorbed effortlessly by the body. I can't speak to one necessarily being better than the other. This is all I've ever used, and it's worked really well for me. So anyway, that being said, I hope you liked this. Please hit the like button, subscribe, check out my other stuff at www.iloveiodine.com. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comment. If you want to leave it privately, please go to my website and leave it in the contact form. That way you can send me a private message if you don't want everybody in the world reading it. Anyway, I really thank you for your time, and I hope that you have a very wonderful day. Peace and love, everybody.